Tim.
I'm Justin.
And this is That News Guy Podcast. We are back at you guys with Hellboy 2, The Golden Army.
Yes. In spite of everything that's going outside, with the coronavirus and all that, yeah, we're doing what we can, but we still got to bring you guys some good stuff.
Yeah, if we don't do that, then we're not podcasters, we're chickens.
And we are doing this separately from our own homes, so you don't have to worry about all that.
Yeah, I can't look Justin's face and say I gave him corona because he's a few miles away, so. Alright, so we did last week, and I know a lot of people didn't hear that because we're trying to transfer back to Anchor, so at the moment we're having a bit of link issues, but we do hope that when we get everything figured out, everybody will enjoy our Hellboy retrospective series, because right after we do this one, we come back at you next week with Hellboy 2019.
I'm not sure how to feel about that one.
I watched it yesterday, and I still feel the same way. So, alright, so our cast consists of Ron Perlman as Hellboy. Doug Jones played the voice of Abe Sapien last one, but he didn't do the body. This one, he did both. And Selma Blair comes back as Liz Sherman. And we have a cameo from Dr. Broom. Alright, so we're going to get into our movie and come listen to Hellboy 2, The Plot. Warning, there is spoilers ahead if you have not seen the sequel.
I'm not sure how to feel about the sequel, though.
Well, we'll figure out how we think about it near the end of it, or during. We never know.
Like, I like the story and the premise. I just not sure about the execution. You know what I mean?
Well, originally the first one didn't make enough to make a sequel, but because Guillermo del Toro had just came off Pan's Labyrinth before this.
Yeah.
When a director does a good movie and gets Oscar nominations, companies will come to you and just quick, fast, and in a hurry say, "Oh, you want to do what movie do you want to do?" And because they've got the street cred they needed, right then and there, boom, they make the movie. And so Hellboy, yes, it took 4 years after our original one, but it came back, same cast, except for John Mayer, but they do explain where they kicked off his character to. But it was still the same thrill ride it was with the original, just the mythos got deeper, and Hellboy grew up a tiny bit.
Kind of.
Okay.
Well, there is a little bit of personal growth that happens later on in the movie, but
he always sounds the same, but eventually gets his past his own head. So our movie begins on Douglas Army Base in New Mexico on Christmas Eve in 1955. We have a return cameo from Dr. Broom, who is telling Hellboy to turn off that wretched puppet show. And he's talking about Howdy Doody. And Hellboy, who is a child at this point, we're in a flashback just so everybody seems to know, just in case. But he argues that Howdy Doody is real, and Broom continues to say, well, Mr. Doo-Doo will have to wait. It's something of that, but it's not actually that. It was just, that's what I heard, and I wasn't trying to, spell out whatever the hell he was saying. And so then he says, well, now Mr. Doo-Doo will have to wait, and you'll have to brush your teeth. Then he turns off the TV telling Hellboy it is time for Betty Bye time, so that he can wait for Santa. And Hellboy, as I said, being the child he is, wanting to stay up and wait for Santa, Dr. Broom says that's not how it works. So Hellboy asks for a bedtime story. And so the story begins of an ancient war between humans and magical creatures. After the magical creatures are driven back by the humans, the goblin blacksmiths extend an offer to Balor, king of the elves, to build him an indestructible mechanical army. Encouraged by his son, Prince Nuada, Balor accepts the Golden Army, subsequently devastates humanity. Regretting his actions, Balor forms a truce with the humans, and that they will keep to the cities and magical creatures to the forests. So the crown to the command the Golden Army, which can only be worn by one of royal blood, is split into 3 pieces. Nuada, disagreeing with the truce, leaves in exile. And then that concludes that bedtime story. And Hellboy asks if it was real. Dr. Broom says you'll find out. And that one's just kind of like a, my quote. I don't fully remember how he said it. But, so then we go into the present. Nuada returns, beginning the gathering the pieces of the crown. He collects the first piece from an auction, unleashing tooth fairies. These little fucking flying freaks.
They're mantis-looking creatures, and they're not the nice kind of tooth fairies either.
No, they look adorable, but the moment that you turn your back, they're eating your body.
Oh yeah, it's horrible.
So they're voracious flying creatures that eat the crowd alive. And so, give me a second here. I fucked up somehow on my notes here. Okay, so now we cut to a scene after all this that our resident bald man is walking with a purpose, creeping up to Abe's tank with a folder. And it says top secret. And we all know this bald man is. If you watch the first movie, you absolutely know who he is.
You're still here.
And well, that's what this whole conversation here with Abe is, because he pulls out pictures in that top secret folder of Hellboy, where a few of them were posed, a few of them were just caught, and some he autographed.
Yeah, and apparently he has a Target printout of his face that apparently Hellboy somehow got printed out. Not sure how he get that printed out, but anyways, Hellboy has it printed out because it's a Target sheet.
Yeah, and he doesn't make bullseyes, I'll tell you that. But it is pretty funny. Abe does not seem, too terribly happy about it.
Well, when it comes to emotion, Abe has emotion. It's just the way he expresses it because of his fairly high IQ.
Fair enough. Yeah, he's like, oh.
So, emotion kind of confuses people with such high IQ. Not all of them, but some of them. Especially if you watch Big Bang Theory, Sheldon's a perfect example of he's so smart, he's stupid.
He's stupid to the human condition, pretty much.
Yeah.
But, so now we go, and we are walking down a hallway of the B.P.R.D, and this ugly blue monster is wrestling and arguing, throwing these agents down left and right, while Abe and Manning, which is our resident bald man, are just walking down this hallway, proceed to talk about how much Hellboy hates him. And then they stop by a room that I can only assume is a squid thingy, and Manning is just sitting there chewing on antacids.
Yeah.
Like nothing's going on behind him. Where he describes, and then Abe is talking about Hellboy and Liz's relationship, that they fight. They have good days and bad days. And then they stop because Abe starts to hear the crunching of metal, and then we cut to this door where the hinges are literally being seared off.
And blown out. And this big vault-like door just comes exploding out and just
barely misses Abe and
Manning down the hallway. It was shot out with such force. It's breaking concrete and not really slowing down all that much.
And so then we look, and now we see Hellboy is on the ground. He's the one that came out the door. He gets up, cracks his back, and you see that his horns on the top are on fire again.
Just a little bit.
And so then he wipes himself off, and he looks at Abe and says, "Hi, Abe."
Manning.
And then they go back into Manning. He does not.
With a
he really
disappointing tone of voice.
really doesn't like him. And so they proceed to go back into Hellboy's room. Him and Liz are arguing, couple stuff. Except for Liz is on fire.
They're having an argument about stuff.
It's space. That's really... He's like, I have one rule only. Don't touch my stuff. And then Liz is like, well then where's my stuff? Because everything in this room is yours. Why do you need vinyl? Why do you need an 8-track? And then apparently he said the world hasn't caught on yet that they made a mistake by making CDs. And so that fight continues for, a couple more seconds, and then you start to hear an alarm go off.
Now, funny enough, they changed the color of Liz's fire.
Yeah, it's not blue this time. She's got so much control on it, it's actually the color of real fire.
Well, no, it's just the color of normal fire. It's just not so hot it's blue.
Yeah, well, she's learned how to control it because I feel like this is just real time. Like, they didn't do that whole thing where they were kind of like, just going to wait until...
With the first movie, her fire was just out of control, so it burned as hot as it could. But
yeah,
with the more control she has, she can dial back the intensity of the heat.
Yeah, and so like I said, that we see the emergency light. So they're going off, and they're gonna, they're getting ready to get all loaded up to go to Manhattan. Liz and Hellboy are still arguing, and then Manning tries to talk to Hellboy and bribes him with very illegal
Cuban cigars.
And he sits there and says, if you can be discreet, a ghost, you can have these. They're Cuban. And so Hellboy proceeds to literally just say 15 things that he's going to try to do. Because we know he's not going to.
It's Hellboy. He does what he wants.
And so then after a while, he banters, and Hellboy and Liz start talking. And pretty much Liz says that he can't be stealthy. And he's like, I followed you and Myers, didn't I? Yeah, and then you had him sent to Antarctica. So, as I just said, Myers is in Antarctica.
Which sucks, because I kind of liked him.
Yeah, well, apparently the actor himself didn't want to come back. He was so busy in his non-existing acting career, he couldn't come back.
Yeah, well, working with some of these actors can be a pain in the ass sometimes.
I mean, Ron Perlman's just being himself.
Which is a dick.
Yeah.
But
so Hellboy...
He absolutely hated playing Hellboy because of all the makeup, all the stuff that they had to put on him just to look like Hellboy.
Trust me, Robert Englund for over 25 years had to do Freddy the same way. The whole Freddy makeup process took 9 hours. I can bet you Hellboy took a heck of a lot longer because there was more detail.
It took at least, if I remember correctly, 10 hours, give or take.
Right, I mean, you gotta think about that. He has to start his day. He has to go to sleep in that makeup almost.
Pretty much.
So Hellboy and the team, they arrive on the scene and the museum is wrecked. And as Hellboy says, it stinks in here. So the scene is empty and Hellboy starts talking to Liz and she pretty much says, we're working here, leave me alone. And then he thought he switched the channel and he tries to talk to Abe and finds out that Liz is on the other line.
Nah, it's still the same.
Yeah, and
he messes up somehow.
I don't know. And then, so now we start to hear something, in the walls. So Abe obviously does his psychic thing, takes off his glove, and is reaching around the wall, reaching around with his hand out to psychically figure out, and he calls them burrowing creatures. And then after that, he gives them,
He's not wrong.
yeah, he gives them the name Tooth Fairies because he found it in a book.
Well, he says their real name, and
Can't pronounce it.
Hellboy's just like, what?
He's like, basically, tooth
Speak
fairies.
English.
All right. And
As
so,
they go
yeah,
for
and
the
so they start to they're starting to mess around the wall, and Abe instinctively puts his hand on Liz to tell her to stay back. And then after the whole moment has ceased, Abe moves his hand, does that weird fish-like thing with his face, and says, "You're pregnant." She's like, "No, I'm not."
Which is probably another reason to why her flame isn't as hot, is because she's pregnant.
And
we all know biologically they tend to change mentally, which changes some stuff physically, so that could affect her.
yeah. And so now we see that a tooth fairy is crawling around, and one of the agents says it kind of looks kind of cute. Then after about a couple seconds, it starts to eat at the agent's stomach and a few other parts of him.
Bet he's rethinking that whole thing.
Oh yeah, I bet. And then Hellboy's over here. He's trying to stop it, and it almost kills the agent. And then Hellboy squishes it with his strong hand.
Oh yeah.
And then pretty much this one here, it's just a swarm happens. A couple more agents die. They start to eat at Abe and Hellboy and a little bit at Liz. And then after a while of, Hellboy just shooting around, nothing's happening. And so after that, Liz starts shooting, and she literally does not miss a shot. And
well, there's so many of them that she may not hit the one she was looking at, but she hit one.
Right, well, she also didn't miss just by a quarter inch or something like that. I'm saying that she hit everyone she aimed at, is what I was saying. But this is gives her more chance to be badass. She's been working with a team full time. And then Hellboy, that statue that we forgot to mention during the museum scene, that Nuada, had sent out the Tooth Fairies originally, the thing with the weird looking tits.
It's a statue that's supposed to symbol fertility.
Yeah, and then he says sorry to the statue and starts to roll it.
Yeah,
and
which does kind of work.
And then, it crushes most of them. Leeds proceeds to put herself on fire.
She does that stupid ass line again with the same tone of.
Are you talking about the mantra that she tries to do to control her power? I mean, that's what they do for most people. They do.
No, it's that whole "you should be running."
Well, maybe everybody loved it from that first one because it was in the trailer.
No, I hate that. It's the way she says it too.
Yeah,
There's no reason for her to actually say it.
All right.
Yeah,
fair enough. Well, except for the human agents and Abe.
Well, yeah, and they tell Abe to go get up into there's a safe in this auction house, of course. So they tell Abe to go get into the safe because he's a fish and fish fry very easily.
Yeah. So the statue that Hellboy had knocked over is trying to barrel over everybody,
which gives them a little bit of time to actually run away.
And then and so another Tooth Fairy starts to proceed and eat another agent, and literally, they do eat this one.
But no, pretty much all the agents that were in the room are dead.
And so Liz is now telling everybody to clear the area
They're just
while she's on fire. And then Liz starts saying a mantra. It says that the fire is mine, and she repeats it like 3 times. And what they do with that, it's like if you had a stutter. They give you something to say. And so she tells Hellboy to stay away from the window because she knows what he's about to do.
And of course he's like,
"I'm coming, world."
Right.
He stays in front of the window and he says,
embraces it.
"World, here I come."
So he gets blown out of the window.
Yeah, and then
this slow motion thing going on. It's kind of, the CG's all right for this scene, but I mean, this New York cop car is destroyed.
Yeah. And so then now we cut to the scene of the elf prince.
Well, before that, we get this whole scene where a couple of tooth fairies about to go after some reporters, and Hellboy just destroys both of them with those big ass bullets.
I guess when I was trying to do my notes, I missed that part. Oops.
Yeah, he reveals himself to the world basically, and Manning is so upset.
I bet he is. I mean, that's the only thing he asked him to do.
Abe signs an autograph. Hellboy looks pleased with himself.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he wanted. He's tired of being in the shadows. He wants all the praise and the love. Do peace, not war, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so, then now we cut to that scene I was just talking about.
So we get back to the prince and his friend / bodyguard, troll with a metal hand.
Yeah, that's his best friend. And so then they're talking about pretty much, handing over their weapons so they can go roughly sit at the big boys table.
Council chamber.
Well, I was saying big boys table because you remember at the end of that story he exiled himself.
Yeah, and he promised to return when his people needed him.
Yep. And pretty much his sister asked him to calm down from cutting that underling's throat.
Yeah, it's just trying to enforce the protocols.
And so then, after that we cut back to Hellboy, who is sitting in literally like in front of 50 camera TVs, like 50 televisions. And he's watching his interview, and then you see one about Manning saying gas leak lie. And then...
Yeah.
So then he starts to talk with Abe, and then Jimmy Kimmel pops up out of nowhere saying, this guy's walking around with a toilet seat on his neck. It's like, it's clearly a breathing apparatus. And so Hellboy's over there, he's having a ball with it and just laughing his ass off because what's happening is they're thinking he's cool and Abe's a square.
Yeah.
And so then while that's going on, Abe is trying, Liz is in the bathroom and she's taking like 50 different pregnancy tests.
Yeah.
And Abe tries to go over there and talk to her. She's like, hey, get away from the door, Abe. Where he's trying to, plead Hellboy's case, saying that I think Red would be a good father. And then she pretty much just tells him to leave. And so, give me 1 second. I'm sorry, I had to get back to my area because I went past my notes. But now we go into the next, like that gas pocket lie thing where Manning looks like he has just been caught with his hand in the cookie jar. And then he walks up next to Hellboy after Hellboy is like, ha, what an idiot. And then Manning's like, you ruined me. You murdered me. You buried me.
Yeah.
And so...
They're sending a new guy.
Yeah, they're sending a new guy, a new handler, because he's tired of dealing with it.
Well, it's not just him, it's,
Washington.
Yeah, people in Washington that are tired of dealing with him.
And so after that, we cut back to the Elven Prince, who is walking into his father's throne room. And, he bows down, starts to, the king asks him why did he break the ancient truce with the humans. And then, pretty much, this is paraphrasing, I will say, but it said it's based on shame because the humans have forgotten the gods and they have left the world to shit, and that's my paraphrase. So the Elven Prince has started to say that we have shopping malls, grocery stores, and we pretty much...
Basically a bunch of useless bunch of stuff, and...
Greed burns a hole in our hearts.
Which...
Yeah, I mean...
I'm not going to argue with...
It's not wrong. The human race is a greedy bunch
horrible,
of shits.
Horrible.
And so he says it's never going to be enough. And the king says what they do is in their nature. Then the king says the honor to uphold that truce is in ours. And then he says there's no honor. Where look at this place in honor. You used to be a proud warrior. What happened? When did you become their pet? So the prince is just kind of over there spewing, and he's trying to rally up everybody in that room to say that I know better, and you guys should follow me. We're gonna take the Golden Army. Well, he doesn't really say the Golden Army, but it does get hinted at after here in a second, because he's got the other two pieces of the crown. Well, no, he's got one piece. He's trying to get one from his dad, and then his dad sentences him to death. And so he proceeds after he asks his sister if she is okay with the path her father has chosen for them. And she says, yes, I am. And he's like, death it is. He proceeds to do a pretty stylized, fight scene. And, he's beating up, cutting them all down.
Yeah, they stood no chance against a guy like this.
Nope. And then after a minute, he gets closer to his father, and he pretty much... He says something, and then... So he just goes through the two guards that are blocking the throne room. Like, he just slides under them, cuts both of them down, gets into up to his father's throne room, and stabs him in the heart. And then he said... Where is it? Hold on. I wrote it down.
He said I've always loved you, Father.
Yeah. And then proceeded after that to take out the piece of crown from his dad's fossilized corpse.
Yeah, when these elves die, they seem to turn into a fossilized amber type deal. Kind of hard to explain what they really turn into.
Yep, and then now, after that, he looks to find his sister, and she's ran away. And he's like, find her! And so, like we said, the B.P.R.D. has, decided to get Hellboy a new handler. The handler is to be revealed as a German agent from the B.P.R.D. called Johann Kraus, played by Seth MacFarlane.
Really?
Yeah, it was Seth MacFarlane in the suit. Well, he wasn't in the suit, but he's the voice.
Huh. I thought his voice sounded familiar.
He plays like he does.
Credits,
It was the German fish from American Dad.
Okay, yeah.
So when he comes off of whatever, ship or whatever they're doing to deliver him to the American B.P.R.D., you see a guy who looks like he's about to tell you, danger, Will Robinson, danger.
Well, they do say that, he specializes in
ectoplasm. Yeah, it's ectoplasmic research or something like that. And then pretty much that gets explained after a little bit, because they're going to be looking at a tooth fairy skeleton here in a second. And he says, let's see how I can get him up to have him talk. And then what he does is Hellboy's going to use an amulet like he did on that German guy with no legs, the corpse at the end of the last one. And then Johann looks at Hellboy and says, no, we will not do that amulet. Let me try something different. So he opens up his finger, and this fog slips out. And then, it fills the tooth fairy. So right after... Yeah, after it rises back up, and it's got a little bit more awake, it starts to proceed to point and look like it's yelling at Hellboy.
Yeah, they have a full-blown argument.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
And he says, you're rude and unintelligent.
And brutish.
And brutish. And then I forgot what Hellboy said, but... Fuck. So then, they're explaining about... Where's the... Poor thing in a German accent.
Yeah.
And who the hell? I messed up my notes here, but they were trying to talk to Johan about that war emblem, and Abe said that it worried him. And then, Manning, trying to be the self-inflated ego that he is, he goes around saying is that when I do something, it gets done. And pretty much without, saying anything, Johan just said fuck off. Burned to death.
No.
I'm so messed up, dude. I don't know. I wrote these notes hours ago, and I should have relooked at them.
No, this whole scene is they get information from the Tooth Fairy before he dies again about the troll market.
Okay.
And they've never been able to find the troll market because Hellboy says it doesn't exist.
Oh yeah, the troll bridge, and it says that they looked. There's over 2,000 bridges in New York, and it says there was an occultist, which I forgot his name. I didn't write it down, but he places it on the east side of the Brooklyn Bridge. They said we've already looked there, and then Johan says, "Not with me, you haven't." So then we proceed, do another suit up mantra thing, and they get back in their garbage truck and proceed to use these weird goggles, but they show so much that you can see that the little old lady on this camera is really like a weird troll.
Yeah, it's a weird troll that eats cats.
And is afraid of canaries.
It's weird.
And so that's what Liz is trying to explain to Manning, and then Manning is wearing the goggles to full thing. He's like, "That's a girl?" So then we've got Abe, Hellboy, and Johan. And they're, walking, and then they duck because they get close to the old lady. And Johan says, "You're not supposed to be seen. We don't want her to see us." And then Hellboy says, "She's gonna eat the cat." He said, "She's going to eat the cat." Like, he just argues with Johan. And then Johan tries to pull that, "I'm in charge of this team." And Hellboy pretty much says, "No, I'm gonna go save the cat."
Yeah, as he does, because he has the thing for cats. Weird.
Yeah, it is just really weird. And he's freaking out because of that, like I said. And then he comes out of that little hidey hole wearing the weird glasses, says, "Lucy, I'm home." And she's like, "How can I help you, dearie?" Like, with my really bad Scottish accent.
Mm-hmm.
And so, after this, they say that we can see what you are. She's like, "How can you see what I am?" And then, so, after that, we cut into a meat packing plant, pretty much, is what it looks like. So, they go past a door, and they go to the entrance of the troll market, and Abe looks it over. It's got a lot of spectral things on its dot.
Yeah, the entrance to the troll market is infused with magic runes and all kinds of other crazy stuff.
And so pretty much he's there's like, "Well, let me try my way." So he asked Abe to hand him back the canary, and she's like, "You can tear out my tongue, take off my limbs, even take out my heart. I will never tell you or open that bridge or open that door." And so Hellboy punches her.
And she goes flying.
And then Johan's like, "That is unacceptable." And he's like, "She said never." And so, after that, you know what happens. We are going to take a break, come back, and finish the latter half of this movie. We'll be right back. Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had a lot of questions. How do I record an episode? How do I get my show into all the apps that people like to listen to? How do I make money from my podcast? The answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is your one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it is 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. that means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading this ad. Yeah, and so we left off.
Doing this stuff, so.
Yeah, that's why it's the funnest part of my day. I should technically be in bed right now, but that's not going to stop me. Yeah, and so, I finished the new Hellboy, like I said, the 2019 version. I finished it. I found it on Amazon yesterday because I got an HBO thing and it's on there, and I watched it, and it was fucking brutal. So when we, it was okay. It's a retelling, so it's like not even the same.
Retelling of the first one?
It's even got like some aspects of the first one, but it's an entirely different story, so to speak. But it does got elements and some characters from the first, except for only one character doesn't show up, and we will explain that when we come up to it next week.
Okay.
But so we left off where Johan is at that stupid lock, and he is just trying that freaky ectoplasmic shit.
He is ectoplasmic. Basically, he's a ghost.
Yeah, and that does get explained later on.
Kind of.
If you have half a brain, and I hate to say it that way because it makes me sound like a heartless bastard, but it's really true.
Heartless bastard.
Only on Tuesdays. It's a Thursday, you fuck.
I've known you more than 10 years.
Yeah, you got a point. So his ectoplasm.
Again. I swear.
What?
Lie to me again, I swear.
What are you gonna do? You're in your bedroom with a tooth missing.
Ow.
So they opened up the door, and you see just like this world. It looks like a back alley for monsters.
That's
like say
it is.
Say Diagon Alley, but just for demons and monsters and.
Well, not demons, but other magical creatures.
Okay, the only demon that's ever been actually clarified is still Hellboy. Even through the first one and into this one, they call him a demon. Mm-hmm. But these other monsters, like, they look creepy. They look like something out of I'd say a Doctor Who episode, most of them, like, without CGI.
Yeah.
And so Hellboy's walking around. He gets on the radio to Liz saying that you should see... Sorry, Corona. Kidding. Just kidding. But pretty much he gets on the radio, and he's talking to Liz saying that you should see it down here. Ow! Hold on. So yeah, you should see it down here. Nobody is watching us. And she's trying to, muster up the courage to go back to what Abe was saying earlier about her pregnancy that she found out about. It does not go that way because of Johann Duschenstein.
Yeah.
He's like, I said radio silence to a minimum. And then he pretty much, has to say, I have to go. And then they proceed to go through this alley and ask questions. And Liz is just kind of staring there first before that happens. She has not slept in like years. Can you see those fucking bags? Okay, they kill me.
Yeah.
So then we cut back to Abe. And Abe is walking down here to see anything he can see. And then he sees...
the princess with the royal
seal. And just catches his eye. Like, he literally just...
love at
after
first
this.
sight.
Yeah, he did. He did love at first sight. And then it... so then he follows her and pretty much, after a little bit, tells Red, saying that I have a lead that might be important. I'll let you know. Could be nothing. And then
Krauss just absolutely failing to get anybody's attention.
Right, he's over here talking really all like proper and nice, and nobody wants to talk to him. So Hellboy learns to speak their language by the way he talks. And then so what happens is he tries to talk to somebody, and they're like, never, never. Like, he's just being rude in his face. So what does Hellboy do? He uppercuts him with his strong hand. Completely throws him halfway across this alley. And lands him into, like, some fire pit. Where's an electric pit? I don't know. It was something that looked... Yeah, it was, like, just something.
Boiling.
You know. And so then after that, you know, you cut back to him, and he's punching this thing that you thought was a mother and her baby.
Nah, it's a dude with a tumor.
Yeah, you don't think that, but he's punching this thing around, and so she's like, okay, I'll tell. And then the tumor says, chicken, proceeds to tell Hellboy everything about, you know, the prince and the Golden Army. And then, you know, he has some form of recognition from a story that was told to him over 50 years ago. And so then, you know, they walk away, and Kraus looks at the tumor and says, good baby, I'm not a baby, I'm a tumor. It's so weird. And it's just so fucking creepy. It's cringeworthy to the max.
Then we get back to Abe following the princess.
And then follows her into a storefront.
Well, not sure
well,
what
before
kind of
that,
store it is, but it's definitely a store.
Yeah, and then before Abe gets there, though, the guy sees the seal and takes the princess to something that her father left for her, which was the map to the Golden Army. And then we go back to that creature that we were talking about with the Elven prince that has the metal hands.
It's some kind of troll.
Yeah, and then he pretty much... Abe is like, run away, I've got this, which we've never seen Abe actually in action, even from the first one.
Well,
but this pretty much just shows that he was good at running away.
He's very flexible.
Yeah, and so he's trying to get her to run away, and he keeps trying to not get hit by this thing.
Yeah.
And then, so after the thing does finally, you know, hit him out the window, not long after that, guess what happens?
Hellboy shows up to save the day.
Yep, he shoots that thing in the back, I think it was, or the shoulder.
Not on the entire metal hand.
No, he breaks that thing.
No, not yet.
Alright, hold on. Yeah, oh, he does. Yep, nope. He shoots it like 3 or 4 times to get its attention.
Yeah.
Then he lights the Cuban cigar, the second one.
It's actually...
I'm sorry. Yeah, it said, he says something and then gets punched directly in the face by that metal hand. Falls into a water pit. You know what happened to his Cuban cigar?
Destroyed.
It was blown up and put into the water. He says, great, that was Cuban. Now I'm pissed off. And so now he's looking for the Good Samaritan. And that thing picks him up.
I'm sorry.
He got gone. So now we go back to another scene where Hellboy is being thrown into the crowd. And so gets, you know, his gun punched by the metal hand. He's dodging, ducking, you know, now he's body shotting everywhere. And that thing just doesn't even look like it's been phased. He's punched in the face. He gets kicked and, you know, lands on his feet. There's a lot more action in this one than there was in the last one.
That's for sure.
And so now they're doing, you know, standoff. He got punched by the metal hand. He punched him with a strong hand twice. And shakes his head. So then Hellboy, you know, spears him.
Yep.
And so now they proceed into a flurry of punches. And Hellboy doesn't look like he's winning. He's got elbowed through a bridge. Well, he uppercutted. And so now his nose is bleeding. And they punch together his rock hand and the metal hand and broke that metal hand.
I guess the magic in his stone hand is stronger than the magic in his...
Yep, and then he puts him on the ground, proceeds to 1-2 punch him until it looks like he's not moving anymore for a while. He says, stay down!
dazed.
Yeah, and then Hellboy just looks like he's trying to get his jaw hurts. So he's over here messing around with his mouth, and he pulls out a tooth.
Yeah.
And he's like, damn.
That sucks.
And it's like, how bet you that feels home for you, Justin? Too soon?
A little bit.
Do you feel like some...
He was like, tooth? Happy?
Yeah, you feeling nostalgic? Homesick?
No.
And so, he punched the hand and it got stuck in the,
Yeah, this metal hand has it.
and it got caught in a gear shift. That's got spikes everywhere.
It's not a gear shift. It's a waste disposal.
And so he lit the other, I guess that was the first Cuban that got destroyed. And he lit the other one, so then Abe comes running up and explains that this is the princess. And then they're trying to get out of where they're at. Wink is dead is what one of the things they're saying. And a big red man killed him. And so, hold on, we get a thing. We get the prince who is messing around with this golden orb-looking thing, an egg. And the elves in this are just, like, they're made to look weird. But if you've ever watched Blade 2, which I know we will cover that eventually, the guy who plays the prince in this played Novak in the second one. Also directed by Del Toro.
That's why I recognize.
Yeah, he played the villain, so to speak, or the secondary villain in Blade 2. The hybrid evolved form, so to speak.
Yeah, I forget the tip.
Yeah, when we get to it and we actually cover it, we will. But so you see, now you got those little creatures that were just talking about it, is telling him where to go, and Wink is dead. And putting their hands together, and then the prince doesn't look happy about that.
No, because Wink has been his friend for a while.
And so they're pulling off like the last little bit of the crown and that scroll. And then Johann pretty much is trying to follow everything by the book, saying that she can give the piece of the crown to them and be on their way to make sure that, you know, the prince doesn't get it. But Abe and Hellboy aren't having none of that.
Like, nah, she's coming with us.
You're gonna learn, like, if they would have made a Hellboy 3 continuing Ron Perlman's character, or just kept doing a lot of them, nobody except for Liz is going to tell Hellboy what to do. And even that, he still doesn't listen. So pretty much, you know, he says her dad just died, and, you know, Hellboy's still reeling off of, you know, the loss of his father. So that's where he does that thing where he said, she's coming with us, we don't care what you say.
Whether you like it or not.
And then, whatever, the prince guy's fucking name I can't pronounce and remember. Nuada, yeah. He says, you're gonna have to pay for that, pay for my friend. And he says, huh, you accept checks? And pulls out his gun. And so then he pretty much pulls out that orb egg looking thing with a green jumping bean. And he opens it and says, kill him, and throws the bean. And then the bean jumps into water, becomes this giant ass green thing. Like, I don't remember how to explain it, but Hellboy is trying to fight it. They find this, before that though, he goes to the truck, the garbage truck, and says, I'm going to get Big Baby. This thing,
which is
it's another pun about his gun. And so another thing that happens with that, we go back, he's trying to fight this thing. They find this woman who is trying to get her baby out of the car. And Abe and Johann talk her away from the car, and so Hellboy is trying to figure out what he's going to do, and so he just breaks the fucking door off, throws it, gets the baby, and starts running away. Until he lands on a sign. Which, that's a weird place if you're running with a baby to stop.
I mean, he does use his, tail.
For the baby.
So, yeah. That's a strong-ass tail to hold a baby.
Well, yeah. And then, so after that, he puts the baby down for a minute. After shooting this thing once.
No. It doesn't put the baby down.
Oh, it was in his tail.
He tosses the baby in the air so he can shoot.
And he's holding onto this H on the hotel, and it's just put the baby back on his tail. And so now that's before. Okay. That means
the baby.
Yeah. Sorry.
Stoning.
I'm watching he just threw the baby up on my front. I'm sorry. I'm a few minutes behind. But he just threw the baby up. He's loading the big baby gun. And then shoots directly at the thing after he catches the baby with the stone hand. And shoots it a couple times. And then here comes Nuobu, I'm just going to call him the Elven Prince so I don't keep fucking up their names. And so pretty much he's over there saying, it's the last of his kind. You want to kill him? It's, cutting it down a little bit. He pretty much just tries to give a speech to make Hellboy be on his side.
Yeah, he's trying to.
And then what happens is he just kind of, he pretty much defeats that creature that is the last of its kind, expecting to, just get a little bit of gratitude from all the humans there. They call him a freak, thinking he's gonna hurt the baby. They say he's got a stone in his hand. That is his hand. Pulled that joke from the first one.
Yeah.
They start throwing cans of soup, and Liz is about to set these little fuckers on fire. Every one of them.
No, Liz is defending him.
It pretty much just puts the news, and he gets very depressed about it. And he's saying, I just want to help them. Why do they hate me so much? And then Liz is also mad because she doesn't like being stared at like a freak. And so then now we cut to another scene where the princess is reading a book. And I think it's Abe's study. In the study. Well, more or less is she reads the book and Abe comes up and he's not wearing all his get-up. And she said she's never seen that before of him not wearing that get-up. And they start to get a lot of...
He puts in a couple of contacts, though.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that part. I guess I missed it. And she says, well, I've never seen your eyes before. And they're doing all the meet cute, awkward love story of two creatures pretty much. And they both like each other. They even say it. And then she says that she's going to bed and Abe can't sleep. And then Hellboy and Liz, I forgot to mention, did say she was leaving for a little bit. And
just to figure a few things out.
Yeah, and Hellboy is like, why don't you just figure them out here? And then she says, I have to do this my way. And then, so like I said, now we're back to full circle. Right after Abe is sitting in the study still after the princess goes to sleep, you get a locker room. Where you got Hellboy and Johan. They're talking, blah, blah, blah. And he says, I don't fully remember how to explain all what he says, but he pretty much says, leave me alone, I don't want to deal with you kind of thing, to Johan. And then Johan says, I could take you. And he's like, oh, really? I didn't hear that from all the way over there. And so then it proceeds to be ridiculous. And he says, you want to know what your flaw is? What's my flaw? Your anger. And then he just proceeds to smash the dome on his head. And thinking he killed Johan, he freaks out for a minute. And then everything proceeds, like every locker proceeds to smack him. And you hear Johan grunting. Then he projects himself as, well, a ghost.
He is acting
Yeah, but I'm saying is that's how he projects himself after everything happens. It says that anger is going to be the death of you, pretty much.
Yeah, he's just, singing in German, just walking away nothing.
Like he's naked. But he doesn't have you can actually see underwear if you actually watch it properly. Like you can see tidy whities in his spectral form.
But he's walking around, limp arm, kind of limp leg, so.
Yeah.
Like not a care in the world.
Nope. And then so now we cut to the scene, and Hellboy is sitting somewhere in the B.P.R.D, and he's opened another beer out of the literal mountain of beers in his locker. Yeah. And he starts to hear music. So he walks down the hall, and he sees Abe, and he says, "What are you listening to?" And he's like, "You fell in love with the princess?" And then so Hellboy and Abe proceed to have, a brother moment. They say they miss, they miss father. They're talking about their loves, and then he forces Abe to drink.
Oh yeah.
And then
because they listen to one of the love songs.
I Can't Smile Without You or something like that.
Yeah, that's the song, but I forget the words.
And so then.
So they start singing.
Yeah, and then Johan hears it, and then most of the agents hear it.
It goes throughout the entire agency within a good area, because they're not being shy about it.
And then you cut again to the. Hold on. Yeah, cut to the prince is outside with the dead agents, and you see a dog sniffing around. And so then they cut from that to where they're now in the room, and Hellboy. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, no. I missed the spot. I apologize. So, because the two Elven children are linked because they're twins, he cuts himself so that they can find her through that dog I mentioned. So she tries to hide the crown piece and try to burn the scroll. But pretty much right after she throws the scroll in the fire, her brother shows up out of nowhere and says that the scroll was inconsequential. He just needed the part, the little metal piece, and
the casing.
Yeah, and then that's where he puts the map on another piece of paper and says it's right here, and tries to tell her give me, where's the crown piece? I will get it. And then, so like I said, now we cut out of that scene to where Red and Abe are in his room, and they're looking over Liz, and he's like, his declaration of love, he'd give his life for her. Why is she always mad at me? And then after a little bit of talking, Abe finally spills the beans and says, "I know what's wrong with her."
He tries to, and then that's when Liz is like, "Nah, shut up."
Yeah, because she was awake for a little bit of it, but when he started to spill them secrets, and then that's where we cut to another scene. Give me a second. I had to get myself caught back up. We're back to the elves, and the B.P.R.D just pulls up all the agents and Abe, and he threatens all of them with a spear. And then you hear Hellboy say something in the background, and everybody of the agents split. And you see he never takes his duty belt off, but he's walking up with his duty belt, pretty much saying, "Come try me," because he is the muscle and the firepower of the team.
He really
Gabe's is the brawn, is the muscle.
brain.
Well, no, Gabe's is the mind, the genius. He's drunk, so he stumbles in front of the Elven prince, and he says, "What is your weapon you choose?" "Five-finger Mary." That's just a joke that would go over a lot of people's heads, but that's just He just made a jerk-off joke. And so they start to square off, and he pulls off that spear I just said and extends it, and it's a nice, display. And he cuts.
He's very
skilled. And then when I was saying, like, it's more action-packed than the other one, you actually see the Hellboy character, even if it's somebody else in the makeup.
Yeah.
It's not Ron Perlman doing the fighting in this one.
No, he's too old to do stuff like that. Especially the whole, he gets put down in a chair and flips down.
Yeah, and he stays in the chair, which I thought, that's a Jackie Chan nod, if anything. But so it's a lot of back and forth. Hellboy's not getting any leeway. But he does not get, seriously injured at the moment. Does that flippy thing in the chair you just mentioned. And then pretty much by the end of it, the prince does his threats and says, well, he stabs Hellboy in the heart with that blade.
Well, not quite.
Okay, well, he stabs closer to it, but the issue was
he breaks off the tip of the spear, and the tip just grows back. I want a spear like that.
Yeah, like, go into battle, you'll never run out of ammo. I bet you it's Elven, that's probably why. Did you remember in every mythological story we've ever heard in our lifetime, Elven weaponry is the best. Usually. But, so now we've got where she pretty much, he tells his sister that she has to stay there and don't move unless she wants him to also kill Abe. Because he does make a comment at Hellboy that he said you wanted to be mortal, well now you are. And so after that, they put him on that, like we said in the last movie, the operating chair, so to speak. For some odd reason, he doesn't want to lay down. He has to be in a reclining looking chair. And so Abe tries to pull out the blade, but what happens is every time he tries to pull it out, it actually moves closer to his heart. So if they keep fiddling with it, it's going to kill him indefinitely. And he's like, there's nothing I can do. And Liz is freaking out. Like, you have to do something. And then pretty much she proceeds to say, well, we're going to have to go after that prince. And Johann tries...
Well, if you notice in the background that the computer behind Abe and Liz says, it's like 0.4 millimeters from his heart.
Move it one more time and...
Damn.
Yeah, I kind of noticed it, but like I said, and so Johann's trying to do that pull-in rank thing, and pretty much nobody in the B.P.R.D. can control anybody, okay? You got superpowered beings that have these mythological powers
that aren't supposed to exist.
Yeah, and they're like, okay, you want to try to get me to stay here due to your jurisdiction? Come try it. I'll set you... Like, she pretty much, without saying it, looks at him and says, I'll set you ablaze. There'll be nothing left. She could probably evaporate his ectoplasm. And so, what we're going to do is we're going to take one more short break, and we're going to come back and finish the rest of the movie. And we'll be right back, everybody! Hi guys, I'm Tim. I'm the other half of Terror Tales Podcast. If you want to come get spooky with us and get scared while we review your favorite horror franchises, or we talk about your favorite horror music or television shows, come join us over at the Terror Tale Podcast under the Nerd Lab Media Productions umbrella. Come join us every Friday. So now we've got, like I said, we went with the blade stuck in Hellboy's heart, and they can't pull it out. Nobody can. So they're like, well, we're gonna go to that prince and make him take it out. And Liz is losing her shit, like I said, to Johann.
She's literally on fire.
And he is like, I'm in charge, with his German accent. And she pretty much does not care. Says that his humanity is gone. So she's sitting in, like, this weird meditative state-looking thing on fire.
And on a rail.
On a rail, talking to Abe, saying, we have to go get him. Abe. And before this prior, Abe finds, because of his psychic ability, he finds where she put that piece of the crown.
Yeah.
And so they're talking like, we should not go to the prince. We have the element of surprise. He doesn't have that piece of the crown. And Abe decides to not show that he has it. So that's when he goes to Liz, and he pretty much agrees with her that we have to go to the prince to get, the thing out of Hellboy's heart, and he's going to save the princess. That's his thing. Abe's in love for the first time in over 600 years, pretty much.
I wouldn't say 600.
I'm overestimating. Fuck off!
At least a century.
And so pretty much Hellboy is, before though they go, Hellboy looks at Liz and says that the only thing important is her. She's like, I'm not leaving you. He's the best man she ever knew. And so they find a plane, they're starting it up, and Hellboy is propped up on Liz, and Abe is walking, and then Johann comes out of nowhere and says, have you got clearance for that plane? And he's like, you're not going to stop us, Johann. And pretty much proceeds to say that he's not going to stop them, and then throws a baggie at Abe. In the bag are wedding rings. He says, I too lost a woman I loved, and pretty much says he's going to help them.
Well, he says that it's his, the reason for his current state of being.
Yeah, and then pretty much it's not going to defer him from stopping them, so he's going to take them. And they go on that plane, and they land in what looks like a desert in Ireland.
Northern Ireland.
Yeah, it's very dead grass. And so then they see this troll who is coming up with no legs, a makeshift wheelchair.
Yeah, it's with a buggy attached to the back of it, so you can carry around some stuff.
Yeah, but he doesn't have legs, okay?
Yeah.
And he pretty much, says they want safe passage to this place that I'm not trying to pronounce right now. And they're like, oh, well, that's not free. You got anything to trade? And she offers her belt, and he's like, I don't have pants. And then they're like, well, he's like, that shiny thing that's on his chest, can I have that? And then pretty much says, I'd love to give that to you, but I can't. And then it says, because it's stuck in his heart, and it says, if I know somebody who could pull it out, would you trade then? And obviously, Liz doesn't even hesitate and says yes. And then they proceed into, he does a whistle, like a dog whistle.
Yeah, kind of.
And a cave, just this stone sits up like a person, and they go into said cave. Then we go into another entity that is roughly explained as, a version of death.
Yeah.
It's a reaper. And
or one of the fates.
Yeah, and then pretty much he says, I need a favor of you. He's like, I have no favor for you, ogre, or something like that. Troll,
Goblin,
and then...
Goblin.
Yeah, goblin. And he says, but I brought you a lot of trinkets and all this. And then they have a whole discussion of, she knows who he is, she knows his true name, destiny, blah, 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 and then talks to Liz and asks Liz, knowing all this, do you want him to stay alive? She says yes. It's like, even though that you're going to suffer...
Of course, she chooses...
Yeah, it's up to her if he lives and stuff. And then she proceeds to ask her questions like, even though you will be the one that suffers the most, I'll deal with it. Hellboy passes out from his injury. And she says, all you have to do is ask. And Liz, asks. And out of nowhere, you just see in that weird-looking thing's hand the blade that was stuck in Hellboy's heart. Then she's like, now give him a reason to live. And so, obviously from that, she decides to tell him that she's with child. Wunderbar with child. I really am. I apologize for that butchering of a German accent. But, so, he wakes up and says, I will be father?
He's so confused.
Speak proper English.
Process words.
You think he could. You really think he would.
No, this is Hellboy.
Yeah, you got a point. That's why even the Tooth Fairy said he was unintelligent. Give me a second. So now they're walking... Like, they're pretty much having a tender moment, and the troll is like, I will have what... the goblin's like, I will have what is mine, and this is where we bid farewell, pretty much saying is we need to get there on time. Hellboy rips off that tourniquet, and they walk in this really big-looking cave thing. And, most of this movie, like I said, it's visually beautiful.
No. But the one thing that this goblin says is that he was the one that actually made the golden army. And one of the furnaces that made the golden army also took his legs.
It's almost like with...
They kind of gloss over...
With Peter Dinklage in Infinity War.
Yeah.
About making the gods' weapons. We need the Dwarf Star. And so they're walking through a lot of stuff. And they get into what looks like a chamber room. Not a chamber room, but it looks like a nice ballet office. And who shows up but the prince and princess? And now we're cutting into our final goodbye of the end of the movie, pretty much. And we might gloss over just a little bit like we normally do. But Abe pretty much, looks like he's about to betray them to give them the peace to the prince so that he can get the princess safe. Because he's just like Hellboy. He's an idiot in love.
Yeah. Well, Abe also says, that Hellboy would do the same thing.
Right. Which...
So...
And so he throws it at the prince. The prince catches it. That dude just looks creepy. I don't care what you have to say to me.
I think it's all the stars.
Well, all the elves look like that. I think it's just him, too. Anything I've ever actually seen that guy in, he looks kind of creepy.
Then we get a little bit of recycled animation from the intro as far as the whole...
Yeah, which is kind of cool. And then everybody who has guns are pulling out guns.
Yeah, Golden Army Awakens, which they say in the movie that it is 70 times 70, which is almost 5,000.
So now we see all the gears shifting, the armies popping up. It's, like you said, it's extensive, and they're trying to kill everybody.
Yeah.
And so now we're in the middle of a fight with all the Golden Army.
Yeah. These are some big...
Hellboy's shooting everybody in the nuts.
Mechanical robots.
Okay. So yeah, and now Hellboy is jumping on top of he's shooting in the neck of a lot of these robots.
Taking out.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing that's a constant in anything you fight. And so now everybody else is in like a pile around these things. And Hellboy is just trying to make quick work of them the best he can.
And he eventually runs out.
And Johann has decided to
take control of one of them and beat the crap out of them. And tosses in one of the arms of the robots to Hellboy so he can slice it.
Right, yeah.
Because, of course, one of the arms has.
And remember how we were talking about in the first one, how the CGI was bad at most moments of that entire movie? They really improved during this one.
Oh, yeah. Especially with the gold.
Right, yeah. And so then you've got Johann fighting, and Hellboy's like, come on! And that's when he throws that arm you were talking about.
Throw me a bone.
And so now he's just going around, cutting everybody in half. And he's just making quicker work than he was.
Yeah, because apparently he's more of a badass with, big-ass melee weapons than he is with a big-ass gun.
Yeah, he's got a lot more breathing room if you really think about it. Like, they had him not move around a lot in that last one.
True.
This one, his stunt double's got a lot of work going ahead of him.
So, once they take out all of the golden army in the immediate area, they realize that they truly are indestructible because they start to reform. So, they're just got crap. So they get backed into a corner, and Hellboy's like, I challenge Nuada for right to command the army. So, Nuada's like, you challenge me. What right do you have to challenge me? You're not royalty and all that. And his sister corrects him and saying that he is royalty because he's son of the fallen.
That's actually his name. That's his name. Yeah, Agnu Na Rama. That's actually Hellboy's real name. Yeah.
Is it? Well, I'm guessing Rama is the last name.
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
A lot of these creatures, I would have to actually go and read something about how the actual comics go about his lineage. Because when we come back next week for Hellboy 2019, you're going to hear a thing about the lineage that they did in that one that you're going to be like, the fuck? But, so now we go full force into this really cool sword fight with the stone fists. And so I'm trying to, so they're trying to fight this. And so they're fighting, and now they're cutting on, and the princess is just... And so now the fight's going full force, super CGI, and I mean,
but it's
flippity floop, and so pretty much they're practically both dead. Abe is about to lose it. He's crying. The prince... Oh, yeah, so now they're dead because they look like they've been in a kiln. Well, that's what I'm talking about when they turn into that marble thing. So they look like they're in kiln. They're clay that's been molten.
Yeah.
And so now Hellboy's got the crown.
He's like, all that power. And Liz is like, give it.
And now we got Manning coming up to the cave. And so they're leaving. And pretty much this is where it goes into Hellboy and Liz quit.
Well, not just Hellboy and Liz, but Abe and
Johann. Okay. They quit. And that's where Liz decides to tell him that bada bing, bada boom, we're having twins.
It's not just one, it's twins.
He's like, twins? And so...
Nani?
And yeah, so, and it's just... And that's where we end our movie. And it was a good sequel. We wish there was more of this particular Hellboy. And we'll tell everybody about our thoughts about that when we come back next week. But at the end of this, I'm Tim. And this has been another episode of That News Guy. See you guys next week. Later.
This has been a Nerd Lab Media production. Come join us on our social pages on Facebook and on Discord. We hope to see you there. Thank you.